Marta Elias had worked the side station at Maison Ardell for 11 months, long enough to know the difference between a slow Saturday and a room holding its breath. That night it was the latter, and the reason was a woman she hadn't even finished noticing yet, a black woman in her early 60s, standing at the host stand in a cream blouse and a good navy jacket, her silver earrings catching the chandelier light as she opened her purse and drew out a printed sheet of paper. Marta was refilling a water glass when the woman's voice reached her, low, unhurried, carrying the particular patience of someone who'd spent a career waiting for rooms to quiet down before she spoke. "The name is Marsh. The reservation is for 6 o'clock. A brief pause. "I have the confirmation right here." Gideon Farrell, the maître d', stood on the other side of the stand with his leather portfolio and the expression he wore when he had already decided something. He was a compact man in his 50s, white, with the bearing of someone who considered the dining room his private province. He barely glanced at the paper. "I'm afraid I'm not seeing it," he said, not unkindly, but with a finality that wasn't quite politeness. "It may have been an error in the system. We can certainly accommodate you, Mrs. Marsh, but I'll need to put you at table 14 for now. Something may open up closer to the window as the evening progresses." Table 14 was beside the kitchen pass. Marta knew this without looking, the steam, the clatter, the short sharp calls of the line. It was where the maître d' put walk-ins, or the occasional diner he judged not worth a better berth. Evelyn Marsh looked at the paper in her hand, then at Gideon, then at the dining room beyond him, a warm, low-lit sweep of white tablecloths and candle glow, a room that on any other night she would have simply walked into. "I made this reservation," she said, 6 weeks ago. "This confirmation has a table number on it." "Table 3. "Yes, well." Gideon touched the edge of his portfolio. "The confirmation system does occasionally produce. Is table 3 available?" A fraction of a pause. "It's spoken for." Evelyn said nothing. She folded the paper along its original crease and put it back in her purse, and then she lifted her head and looked at him the way, Marta would think later, a woman looks at someone who has said something she already knew was coming. "All right," Evelyn said. "We'll sit at 14. There were 5 of them, Evelyn, her husband Raymond, 2 of their adult children, and Evelyn's sister, who'd driven in from 2 hours away. They settled around table 14 with the courtesy of people who had decided not to make a scene, and Marta brought them menus and water and bread, and when she asked if they were celebrating anything, Evelyn smiled and said, "My birthday." Marta said happy birthday, and meant it, and walked back to the side station feeling the weight of something she couldn't yet name. 40 minutes passed. 2 parties arrived after the Marshes. Gideon walked the first, a white couple, directly to table 3, the window table, and pulled the chair out for the woman with a small, practiced flourish. He walked the second party to table 7 and stood talking with them for a moment, laughing at something. Marta watched. She watched Evelyn Marsh watch the window table fill. She watched Raymond put his hand over his wife's hand on the tablecloth for a moment, and she watched Evelyn turn back to the menu with the precise, contained stillness of a woman who has learned, over a very long life, how much of herself she must withhold in order to remain. It was the sister who leaned in and said something quiet, and Evelyn shook her head once, small and firm. Marta knew what she was watching. She'd known for 20 minutes. The knowing had a specific weight. She was 24, she worked here, Gideon had the power to cut her hours, and none of this was her business. She also knew she was going to say something. The couple at table 12, 2 white women, somewhere in their 40s, who'd been watching too, got there first. Marta was on her way back to the kitchen when she heard one of them say, clearly enough to carry, "Excuse me, did that family have a reservation?" Gideon was nearby. He turned. "Pardon? That family? At 14. Did they have a reservation when they came in?" The dining room did not go silent, not quite, but the ambient register dropped by several degrees. The way rooms do when something is happening that everyone has been privately aware of but no one has yet said aloud. "That's a matter I'm not able to." "Because," the woman said, pleasantly, "the gentleman at table 3 arrived after them, and I noticed you put him at the window." She set down her wine glass. "I'm just wondering how that works." Gideon's jaw tightened, barely. "Ma'am, seating arrangements involve a number of considerations." She had a printed confirmation, Marta said. She hadn't entirely planned it as an interruption, but it came out that way, standing 3 feet from Gideon's elbow, and there was no taking it back, and she found she didn't want to. "I'm sorry," Gideon said. "Mrs. Marsh." Marta kept her voice level. "She showed you a printed confirmation with a table number on it." She looked at Evelyn. "Didn't you?" Evelyn Marsh looked at Marta, a long, measured look that seemed to be deciding whether to trust something. Then she reached into her purse and placed the folded paper on the edge of the table. "Table 3, she said. 6 o'clock. The dining room was fully quiet now. Not the anxious silence of a confrontation, but something different, a collective attention, turned, like a field of faces, toward a single window. The couple at 12. An older gentleman at 9 who'd set down his fork. The party at 7, who'd stopped talking. Gideon looked at the room once, a quick sweep, and what Marta saw in that fraction of a second was not anger but calculation, a man registering that the room was not with him. He said, without looking at Evelyn, "I'll speak with the managing partner." He said it as though this were a concession of his own choosing. Then he walked toward the back with the careful pace of a man doing his best not to look hurried. Marta stood where she was. Evelyn picked up her water glass, took a slow sip, and set it back exactly in the center of its coaster. Her husband said something to her, very low, and she nodded once. Her sister exhaled through her nose, not a laugh, not quite, but something in that direction. The managing partner was a tall white woman named Claire Rousseau who had co-owned Maison Ardel for 14 years. She came through the kitchen door in 4 minutes with the look of someone who'd heard enough. Marta watched her read the confirmation, glance at Gideon, and take in the room, all in 30 seconds. Then Claire crouched beside Evelyn's chair. "Mrs. Marsh," she said, and her voice was low and direct, "I am sincerely sorry. Table 3 is yours. It was yours from the moment you walked in." She stood and looked at Gideon, and what passed between them was brief and unmistakable. "I'll have it set for you immediately, and your dinner tonight is on us, entirely." Gideon was not there when the Marsh family crossed to table 3. He had been asked, quietly, to finish the evening in the back office, and Marta understood without being told that the conversation waiting for him there would be the kind that changed things. The woman at 12 caught Marta's eye as she passed and gave her a small nod. Marta nodded back. At table 3, Raymond held his wife's chair for her. Evelyn sat down and looked out the window, at the street below, at the Friday evening foot traffic, at whatever a person sees when they've been told, again, that they don't quite belong, and then been proven right to have stayed. Her face was composed. It had been composed the whole time. Marta brought them fresh bread and lit the candle that had burned down, and when she said, "Happy birthday, Mrs. Marsh," the second time, Evelyn looked up at her and said, "Thank you, sweetheart, for what you did." "It was the right thing," Marta said. Evelyn considered this, not dismissively, but the way a woman considers a statement that is technically true but perhaps incomplete. Then she smiled, small and real, and said, "Yes. It was." The dining room had gone back to itself, the clatter and the candlelight, the low run of conversation. But something had shifted, the way a room shifts after it has found out what it is made of. The man at 9 picked up his fork. The couple at 12 were laughing about something. Marta carried the bread basket back to the side station and stood for a moment in the noise of the room, thinking about what it cost a person to sit still and stay composed when the world kept asking them to prove they belonged. And how small a thing it was, in the end, to say what everyone around her already knew. The next week, Claire posted a policy review on the restaurant's website, new reservation protocols, a third-party confirmation system, and a note about the standards of welcome Maison Ardel held itself to. It didn't name anyone. It didn't need to. What it said, plainly, was that a seat was a seat, a reservation was a promise, and every person who walked through the door had earned the right to be treated as if they belonged. Which, of course, they always had.